What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham Juice Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the latest episode of WWE 24 on the 2022 Royal Rumble. Now, I thought this went up well before WrestleMania 38 weekend. Apparently, looking at it now, it only went up that Friday. The Friday, the Hall of Fame, SmackDown, the Friday of Mania weekend, which is only about a month ago. And usually I review this stuff a lot quicker than that, but just haven't had the time. I still have to watch the Broken Skull sessions with Bubba Ray Dudley from a few weeks ago. And then the Cody Rhodes one is coming up this weekend. And Evil, too, that Evil show on Peacock. There's a lot of stuff to catch up on. I thought I would start first with the 24 that went up about a month ago. And it was quite good. It was weird timing that they put up a Rumble 24 over Mania weekend. And it got overshadowed by everything else. There was a lot going on in Mania weekend. Over Mania weekend, I was there. Completely forgot about this until recently, so thought I would go back and check it out. And the 24s, first of all, are always well worth watching. Second of all, it's been a while since we've gotten one. I think the last one we got was on Mania 37, Night 1 and Night 2. I think they were two separate 24s, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly. And those went up over SummerSlam weekend, I believe. So that was back in August. We haven't had a new 24 since then, and that's very weird of them to be doing that because they used to be putting up new 24s like 4 or 5 a year, if not more than that, like on certain superstars and events and stuff like that. So it's been a shame that we really haven't had a lot of new 24s and just new content in general in the last year, ever really since they moved to Peacock. We're getting more now between this, the Evil show, Broken Skull sessions. I just broke down the Table for Three with Kurt Angle, Chad Gable, and Otis last week here on the channel. So hopefully that's a sign of things to come, and 2022 will be the turning point for where they go back to doing more regular content on Peacock and on the network elsewhere. Fingers crossed, because this was really good and is well worth checking out for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. So they start off the episode with Kevin Owens calling the Royal Rumble one of the most exciting shows of the year, and how it always kicks off WrestleMania season. Edge and Beth Phoenix, who were on the 2022 Royal Rumble card in a mixed tag team match with The Miz and Maurice, recall Royal Rumble memories, and not of their own, but rather of Rumbles they grew up watching, and how it was one of their favorite shows growing up before they got into the business. We hear from Pat Patterson in a clip from, I think, 2014, and I think they've included this in various other documentaries before, the Rumble documentary, his documentary. I've seen the clip before, but he passed away, obviously, in 2020, but he talks in this clip from 2014 about how he wanted something similar to a Battle Royal, but to innovate on them. And then this is when he's talking about the inception of the Royal Rumble match itself, and he goes into much more detail about this in the aforementioned Pat Patterson documentary, and the Rumble documentary that came out a few years ago. But they brought the idea to, I think he was the NBC president at that point. I don't think he still is, but Dick Ebersol, because they were looking for new, fresh, innovative ideas for their network. And Vince called it a stupid idea, this Royal Rumble concept, where instead of having all 20 or 30 men in the ring at the same time, you have people come out in increments of 30, 60, 90 seconds, whatever, 2 minutes. Vince thought it was a dumb idea, but told Pat to pitch it to Dick anyway, and Dick loved it. He gave it a shot, and it ended up being, or I think they did one in a house show before they developed it into a pay-per-view. It was like a test run. I don't know if that would count as a Rumble match, but I'm pretty sure they had done one at a house show prior to that point. But the first ever Rumble pay-per-view they did in 1988, and I thought Bruce Pritchard was bullshitting when he said this, but I looked it up and he was right, that the Rumble in 88 did the highest number in cable history at that point, which is wild. With a rating of like 8.2 or whatever it was on the Nielsen rating scale or whatever the fuck it is, which is incredible. And obviously after that it became a staple. They kept it around. And it wasn't until 1993 that the winners of the Rumble started earning title shots, beginning with the Yokozuna that year. We hear from Michelle McCool briefly, who said that she loved Shawn Michaels winning from the number one slot in, what would that have been, 1995, right? Or was that 95 or 96? I don't remember. I'm pretty sure it was 95, though. Or maybe it was 96. I don't remember. But she loved that moment for Rumble moments. Winning the Rumble, according to Rollins, he says, is kind of like the stamp of approval from the company, that they now see you as being main event material, ready for that main event spot. And I would say that's more of an indictment on Money in the Bank for the most part than it would be the Rumble. Because the Rumble, a lot of the people who win the Rumble are already main event ready. They're already main eventers, especially the people that have won it multiple times. People like Stone Cold Steve Austin, John Cena, Batista, Triple H, Randy Orton, Edge, so on and so forth. So, Rollins was already a star when he won it, but I guess it does feel good to know the company's behind you enough. They're going to be putting you in the main event of WrestleMania, or so they say. That doesn't exactly happen every year. It didn't happen this year, but at least with the women. Anyway, so they talk about the evolution of the Rumble match itself and how it only made sense for the women to get their own Rumble match starting in 2018 after all the great work they did in reinventing the division and kind of getting more eyes on it and stuff like that. One of the few people they focus on during this documentary was Austin Theory, and he talks about this being his first Rumble. He actually went to the Rumble, his first Rumble in person was the 2010 one. My first Rumble watching as a fan live. I mean, I started watching in 2008, but like the first one it was like the first pay-per-view I actually ever ordered was the Royal Rumble 2010. It was a great show, an even better Rumble. The Rumble match itself, the one that Edge came back and won, that was in Atlanta, so it makes sense. Theory's gimmick about being from Atlanta, Georgia is not a gimmick. He actually grew up in Atlanta. So we went to the Rumble that year. They show a clip of where he was in the crowd, which is pretty funny. And he knew from a young age he always wanted to be in WWE. He was told growing up that he would grow out of it, find another interest in whatever, but he never did. He actually went to WrestleMania 27 the following year in 2011, went to Access, had to meet all the people, including the Bellas, and you see a shot of Austin Theory in the front, not the front row, but like where the Bellas were doing their Access meet and greet, and you see him up against the barricade. It was a really funny shot. And he's a young guy as it is now. Like, he's younger than me. I'm 26, he's like fucking 23, 24 at this point. So at that point, he would have been 13, 14 maybe? Or maybe 12, I don't know. But do the math, he was pretty young back then. So he was at the gym when he was a kid, and he ran into a bodybuilder who told him that he did this bodybuilding competition, and he got a WWE tryout out of it, and that really interested Austin Theory, thinking, wow, if this guy could do it, then why can't I? So he actually got into bodybuilding because of that, won a bunch of competitions, or at least one of them, and there were no WWE tryouts there, but he thought that would be his way of getting into the company. One thing led to another. He started wrestling in Evolve in, I think, 2017, got a tryout with WWE in 2018, and then didn't get signed then. He was actually on the front page, I think, of the website when they, put up the article about the tryouts and whatever, which is cool. And he knew he was going to give it his all. He didn't get signed then, but he did in 2019. I don't know if he did another tryout in 2019 or they just picked him because at that point he was the Evolve champion. So he already had a lot of experience. He was already on the WWE radar. He was on the fucking WWE Network special with the rest of the Evolve people in the summer of 2019, so it only made sense. He finally debuted on NXT TV in a North American title match, actually, with Roderick Strong, who actually, as of today, just recently requested his release. But yeah, I think it was on the Christmas episode. They filmed it prior to Christmas, but they aired it on Christmas. I remember that very vividly, and it was a great match to boot. He kind of got this reputation for not being overly exciting and not showing much personality. He was way more straightforward back then, which I remember, and I would probably be saying the same thing, that he should be showing more personality. We got to see that personality in NXT. He doesn't talk about that here. He talks more about, or his first main roster run. This is kind of like an abbreviated version of his main roster, of his WWE career so far. He just kind of immediately skips to the main roster move in late 2021, where he started doing the selfies and all that other stuff, and he never saw a ceiling after that for what he could do. But yeah, he doesn't mention the way, which is weird. Like, the Johnny Gargano stuff with him and Indy and Candice really was the turning point for me as far as how people viewed Austin Theory. So for them to not even, I know Gargano's not in the company anymore, but come the fuck on, that's pretty dumb. Anyway, he sees himself now as Vince's protege. The first segment with Vince went well backstage. Vince gave him pointers, and it's something that really has gotten him on the map. Kofi Kingston talks about his own Royal Rumble opportunities and spots and moments and whatnot, and how if he wasn't going to win, he's always wanted to stand out and be talked about, and he's done that through his various Royal Rumble, avoiding of eliminations over the last decade. Various highlights of the Royal Rumble have been, they show that here with Santino being eliminated in a minute, Drew Carey's elimination spot in the Rumble back in 2001. They show the various surprise entrants from John Cena to Trish Stratus in 2018 to Edge in 2021, or 2020 rather, and the list goes on. We hear a little bit too on this episode from Johnny Knoxville. He was one of the featured focused people on this episode of 24. He was backstage with the rest of the Jackass crew, or at least some of them, and he shows some love for the King Jerry Lawler, and he wears his crown, or a different crown, maybe not Jerry's crown, but he was marking out over meeting Jerry Lawler. Theory runs by and picks him up backstage. It was really cool. We don't hear a lot from Johnny Knoxville on the episode, but he is one of the featured focus faces on the show, and he did a great job. You could tell he genuinely wanted to be there, which is really fucking cool. And he even said at one point, "Oh, I hope I can come back." And he eventually was brought back for Mania to do the whole thing with Sami Zayn, which is cool. Another featured focus face on this episode was Alita, and she talks about getting the phone call from John Laurinaitis about doing the Rumble. She was like, "Absolutely, I'm in." She recalls the career she had and being a trailblazer for women's wrestling in WWE in the early 2000s before taking a break from wrestling in 2006. She was shocked when she came back and started watching wrestling again that the championship had since turned pink with the Divas Championship. Thus, she was very happy. She was not a Divas Championship fan, as you could probably tell here. And there's been a lot of people over the years that have actually defended the Divas division and the Divas Championship, and that's not to shit on anyone that was in the Divas division, but I mean, the belt we have now with the women Raw or SmackDown, take your pick, is far better than that piece of shit, in my opinion. The butterfly belt, some people like it. I always thought it was trash. But anyway, she was very happy to be the one to introduce a title that looked like it belonged, in her words, at WrestleMania 32 for that triple threat between Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, and Sasha Banks. She really felt like the new women had done it as far as taking women wrestling to that next level. Come the 2022 Royal Rumble match that she was in this year for the women, she didn't want to be the weak link. So anyway, they show other highlights of other Royal Rumble matches over the years, but not in the Rumble itself, but rather championship matches that have taken place at the Rumble, from Taker and Shawn in 98 to Cena and Styles in 2017 and all these other matches in between. Obviously not going to show Angle and Benoit, but that was a great non-Rumble match from the Rumble in 03 for the WWE Championship. Or Benoit and Jericho, I believe, from 01, I want to say, the ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. But anyway, we hear from AJ Styles, who says that the match that he's really looking forward to on the show is Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship. Bobby is another person they focus on here, and he says that he had been waiting for this challenge for a very long time. Coming up in wrestling before he actually joined WWE, he saw Brock doing his thing. They kind of came from similar amateur wrestling backgrounds. He saw Brock doing all the things that he would be doing, that he would eventually be doing when he joined WWE years later. And for all the comparisons he got, to Brock and all the comparisons that were drawn among fans between the two, he knew they would have to face off eventually. MVP calls him one of the most driven, self-motivated people he's ever met. And that's kind of the preview for that match that we'll get into momentarily. But yeah, this was the biggest crowd, I guess, in 2 years for WWE. Bigger than the crowd they did for, that's what Peter Rosenberg said. I don't know if that's true or not, but they said this was the most amount of people they had in a building since before COVID. And I guess it was more people than... I don't believe that for a second, though. I'm pretty fucking sure that... I might be wrong, but I thought the Vegas show at Raiders Stadium had more people. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that show did like at least 40,000 people. I don't think 40,000 people were there for the Rumble in 2022, but I could be wrong there. Anyway... they recap the Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins Universal Championship match, which was excellent. In between that, we hear from Lita, who talks about how her neck and arm are bothering her, which I did not know that never really came out. She didn't talk about that in other interviews, unless I'm mistaken or missed it. But I guess she kind of not hurt herself during training the day before, but she must have tweaked something, and her neck was bothering her the day of the show, and her arm was, but... She put on a brace for a little while, took it off, and went out to the ring and wrestled, and you would never know there was anything wrong with her, so props to her on that. Speaking of the Women's Rumble, they recap that. Lita really felt like she was in the right place at the right time in that match and really felt like it clicked for her. They don't talk about her subsequent return for Elimination Chamber, but that's what that performance would lead to. Like, literally immediately, as she's talked before about how when she walked through that curtain, she was told immediately, by John Laurinaitis or whoever, "Hey, do you want to come back for the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view? And contend for the Raw Women's Championship against Becky Lynch and Saudi?" And she was like, absolutely. Anyway, we hear from Ronda Rousey, the Women's Rumble winner for this year, afterward, and she said that she always wanted to return in the Rumble as a surprise, because she's a wrestling fan, she gets it. And she actually started training. That was what she was really worried about, was that after she gave birth in September, she wanted to be ready for the Rumble, and she was, ultimately. And wow, I mean, that major props. I mean, she started, that in-ring training to get ready for her return in September. She came back in January. That's pretty amazing. I mean, it doesn't really matter how short or how long it takes to get back from something like that. I mean, it's an incredible feat in and of itself to give birth, obviously, but the fact that she came back at all, let alone that quickly, really is incredible. And she was obviously dedicated to making that goal, and she did it, which is super cool. Anyway, so Lita talks about all the positive feedback she got from the women that were in the match that came up to her afterward and told her, hey, it was a real honor sharing the ring with you and wrestling you, whatever. So she really liked that. And she said everything really goes by super fast and that you don't really get a chance to let it soak in and enjoy the moment, and because you worry all day and all week and all month about this one night, and then it goes by and it's over like that, you know what I mean? So anyway, we hear, or rather see the recap for Becky Lynch and Doudrop for the Raw Women's Championship. They recap the Edge and Beth versus Miz and Maurice mixed tag team match. And then right after that is the WWE Championship clash between Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar. Bobby says he's 100% prepared, and he wanted Brock to give him his best shot to prove he could still be standing there. They recap the match, which wasn't great, wasn't this instant classic that we were all hoping for or whatever, this very super memorable match, but it was fine for what it was. And the fact that Brock, or rather Bobby, was probably hurt at that point, as we later found out, probably didn't help. But anyway, he's very happy to be the new WWE champion, to have beaten Brock, finally getting the match. And he felt like the people were behind him during the match, all these people that followed his journey, and we see him doing an interview over the phone with Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated and all this other cool stuff. And then we get to the Men's Rumble, which they don't really recap in great detail. They really run through this very quickly in the final 6 minutes of the episode here. Austin Theory just says that he's excited to walk through the curtain, and then talks his experience being in the Rumble after he's eliminated backstage. They recap the rest of the Rumble, Riddle being in there, Brock winning the whole thing, Orton being in there in his hometown, Johnny's spot, Johnny Knoxville's spot, and Johnny said he will be world champion one day. Thankfully, they showed no sight of Shane McMahon in the fucking match. They showed Bad Bunny being in there doing the Canadian Destroyer to Riddle, which was cool, to Riddle, and Brock giving Bad Bunny the F5. Props to Bad Bunny for another great performance in the Rumble this year, but yeah, no sign of Shane. You would never even know he was in the match from watching this 24, which is great. They completely cut that man out. Anyway, this was good stuff. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and it's been a while since we last got a 24. Like I said, it's been since August, I believe, when they focused on WrestleMania 37, so it's been long overdue. I'm glad we got it, though. It does clock in at around 45, 46 minutes, but like I said, well worth the watch, and I look forward to them hopefully doing more of these in the next couple of months. I would love to see one on Cody Rhodes, maybe the retirement of The Undertaker, which I know the last ride is basically what that was, but like his WrestleMania weekend would be cool to hear from him on that. Or just Mania weekend in general. Obviously, I'm sure they've done one on WrestleMania. They've done a 24 on WrestleMania every year for the last 7 or 8 years. Really ever since WrestleMania 30, I think. And I think that might have been the first 24 they ever did. So I'd be shocked if we didn't get one on WrestleMania 38 at some point. Usually they've done it before around the Rumble the following year. But in recent years, they've done it in June. Last year, they did it in August. So they might be putting up the 24 and Mania 38 on the sooner side. But I would love to see one on Cody Rhodes at some point. Hopefully around the time he wins the World Championship, ideally. But that's my own personal preference. But yeah, thank you guys for checking out my review of this episode of WWE 24. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Check out all the other content we got going up right now. We had WWE 2K22 gameplay footage go up yesterday. We're starting a new series called GSM for GM, starting on Sunday of this weekend, I believe, where I run through the GM mode on my GM and WWE 2K22. We had media scrums go up in the last week from WrestleMania weekend. My interview with the then Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch, that went up today. Other interviews, Raw Talk reviews, SmackDown reviews, Talking Smack reviews, WrestleRant radio excerpts, breaking down Table for 3, #AskGSM. Like I said, a shit ton of content coming to the channel right now. We just reviewed the Batman over the weekend, probably talking Obi-Wan Kenobi at some point this week for May the 4th, and a lot more. So if you're not already subscribed and you haven't already hit the bell button to be notified of new videos, what the hell are you waiting for? Have a great week, guys. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.